Final Fantasy 15 has been in development for like, what, 10 years by now? Yet, despite the development hell, despite the myriad of technical issues and unstable frame rates, despite the confusing story that asks you to watch other media not bundled with the game, Final Fantasy 15 exceeds all of the preconceived notions that I expected. Sure, it has the typical save the world junk that you would expect from any JRPG, but it's quite obvious that this is not a typical Final Fantasy. This is a game that's been heavily influenced by Western game development. There's open worlds, side quests, and the retirement of turn-based stat-heavy combat. Yet everything kind of comes together in the end. My name is Game Taco, and this is my sort of brief review of Final Fantasy 15. So, like I said, Final Fantasy 15 has been in development hell for ages, and unlike other famous games that get stuck in development for years and years, at least Final Fantasy 15 can stand knowing that it has evolved over time into a unique product independent of its peers. The main thread that pulls everything along is friendship and loyalty, mainly between the Prince of Darkness, or Noctis, the Prince of Lucis, and his 3 bodyguards. The story starts off with our Prince Noctis leaving his kingdom to be married to Lady Luna Freya, an oracle that can communicate with the gods. The only problem is that she's being held captive by the Niflheim Empire, and the marriage is essentially an attempt to formulate some sort of peace or treaty. Well, the treaty goes about as you would expect for a Final Fantasy game, and suddenly Noctis is not really a prince anymore. That's all you're going to get out of me for right now, because I don't really want to give any spoilers. At first I thought that Noctis was going to be all emotional and sheltered, kind of like the previous Final Fantasies, but happily that is not the case. There is no moping or huge stereotypes here, thank God. There are 3 main party members alongside Noctis. There's Gladiolus, the brute and serious guy that has abs of steel and loves to show it off. There's Ignis, your personal driver, who seems more like a librarian than a bodyguard. And there's Prompto. Well, let's just say he's your group's photographer, and he's Noctis's childhood friend. Oh, and he's also completely useless. At its heart, the character development and the relationships you see evolve between these characters are really just fascinating from a gameplay perspective.
Loving that outfit, Noct.
Why don't you wear one?
Square Enix has done a remarkable job at making everything seem real and plausible. These guys are friends, they've known each other for years, and you can tell just from the way that they joke around, they pick on each other. Just take a look at the beginning of the game. You start out pushing your broken down car to a garage over what is essentially the American Midwest. This sequence introduces you to the main players in a remarkable and friendly way. It says, hey, these characters are basically BFFs. Let's follow them and see where they go. Let's see what adventures they embark on. Let's follow them and watch their relationships and personalities blossom. That's really what's beautiful about Final Fantasy 15. And yeah, I know that sounds super sappy, but these characters are definitely relatable.
Just let go.
Prompto, don't even think about it.
Save some breath for pushing.
Ignis, come on, time to switch. Nuh-uh, we just switched back there.
And it's my turn, Noct.
His turn.
Beyond the relationships between the characters, I feel like Square Enix has just put too many resources into developing this setting that they kind of bit off more than they could chew. To fully understand Final Fantasy 15, you have some homework to do before you even start playing the game. There are 2 separate films that you should watch, and there's also a beat-em-up game that helps flesh out the story before you even press new game. By the time you get into the game, you will be flooded with questions, and even towards the end of the game, these questions don't entirely go away. There is a silver lining to this though, and that's the really quick opening. I hate waiting around for games to actually start. Here you'll be in within about 15 or 20 minutes, so you can actually take some missions and get used to the combat in a natural way. Needless to say, I didn't watch the extra material, so there are a lot of things that I still have questions about. I think I know what happened though. I bet throughout all of the staff and title changes for Final Fantasy 15, Square Enix had a hard time keeping the original identity and core of the game, and that kind of makes sense because later on there are some chapters that just feel off. It varies between linear hallways and these giant open worlds. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can feel jarring to be shoved through hallways after you were in these huge open worlds moments before. No, come on out, I want to make an example out of you. But at the same time, after the travesty that was Final Hallway 13, I can't blame Square Enix. They went in the complete opposite direction. And honestly, that's probably why some parts of 15 feel like I'm playing Witcher 3. There are what feels like hundreds of side quests and just tons of things to do in certain chapters. Some will have you searching for colored frogs, others will have you accepting missions to eliminate specific monsters like this huge demon, or maybe you just want to relax and catch some fish. Side note, the fishing is actually really awesome in this game. You have to pick your line and your lure, and there's dozens of fish to catch. There's also chocobo racing, there's pinball, there's car modifications because you will be spending a lot of time in your car. There's dungeons, there's huge enemies, everything you want in an open world game is right here. There's even a pretty lengthy side quest about cup noodles, because apparently everything in Japan revolves around cup noodles. Can someone explain this to me? This quest is kind of funny though. Gladiolus asks you for your favorite flavor of cup noodles, and depending on what you pick, you go and hunt for the ingredients. In my case, I picked shrimp, so I had to go fight this rather tough giant shrimp. And yes, it feels rather fishy to see such blatant product placement as a part of the game. I feel bad for Gladdy's voice actor because it's basically like they handed him a transcript of the commercial.
Best ingredient. It's about crafting that perfect blend of meat, egg, and shrimp. That harmony of flavors is key.
Yeah, you're right. Makes you...
Fun fact, in Japan, there is a Final Fantasy commercial with cup noodles inserted into key moments. That's how big this partnership was. The combat is easily the biggest departure from the series so far. It's in real time, it's quick, it's savage, and until you learn the basics, it can be very difficult. And with all the time you'll be spending in your car, I guess you could say it's fast and furious. Thank you, I'll be here all week. To be honest, I'm kind of divided on the battle system. There are certain points in the story where it really pushes all the right buttons and everything just kind of comes together to feel awesome, and you feel like a badass when you take down a mech for the first time. When you're driving at night, something that your party members really do not recommend, and you run into an iron golem, it is absolutely terrifying. In fact, what you're seeing on screen right now is perhaps one of the scariest moments in the game for me, because I was so early in the game and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I went driving at nighttime and I didn't listen to my party members, and I'm fighting an iron golem that's probably 24 levels ahead of me. I used almost all my healing items and some of my party members were killed, but I'll be damned if I'm not proud for taking down that metal son of a bitch. So while there's an aspect of the combat that just feels so fresh and satisfying, there's also a part of it that really kind of falls flat. I think part of that has to do with the varying degrees of control you have with your party. With Noct, you have complete control over him, but the rest of your party members are on autopilot. You can pick a skill for each of them to use, but other than that, there's not really much here to work with besides the equipment and that single skill. And because of that, after you use Regroup, which is a healing spell I very highly recommend if you're playing this, you're stuck with a cooldown period where you have to heavily rely on potions and healing items to recover your health. If you're just waltzing around the overworld, you never know what you'll find, so you might find some nasty creatures like this awful serpent that will deal a lot of pain. If you don't have any potions when you fight Mr. Snake here, odds are someone will die or take a lot of damage. Technically speaking, Final Fantasy 15 is a gorgeous game. This thing really pushes my PS4 to the very limits of the hardware. I'm sure that because of two reasons. One is that my PS4 sounds like it's dying whenever I start the game, and two, the game runs at subpar but stable frame rates. I'd wager between 22 and 25 most of the time. I'm sure it runs much better on the PS4 Pro, but I don't have one to test. In fact, all the footage you're seeing here is captured directly through the PS4's share function. I don't have the game on Xbox One, so I can't really test the performance there either, but I'd wager it's pretty similar to the PS4. The soundtrack is absolutely astounding, as you would expect from Final Fantasy. There are huge orchestral sweeps during epic boss battles, calming pieces as you look over the setting sun, and the entire anthology of Final Fantasy music is included while riding in your car or walking around the overworld. Kind of makes the hair on my neck stand up whenever I hear the intro to Final Fantasy VII come on while I'm driving. Final Fantasy 15 took 10 years to develop, so I guess the question on everyone's mind is it worth it? Should I buy it? Well, that's easy. I don't think any game is worth waiting 10 years for, but this is definitely a brilliant game, whether you long for the golden age of Final Fantasy or if you're new to the series. It's different, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's more evolved than anything. It's certainly not bad by any means, but it is flawed to a certain extent. Make the decision yourself and check out some additional gameplay footage if you're still on the fence, or if you're not really sure, maybe you can wait for a price drop. Keep in mind that I didn't cover everything or even close to 50% of the content in this game because I really wanted to spoil as little as possible. This is really an adventure that you should experience for yourself. Thanks for watching, everyone. My name is Game Taco, and if you enjoyed this, please feel free to bop the thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this review. If you're looking for some other RPG reviews, specifically from Square Enix, check out my review of World of Final Fantasy or my review of Dungeon Quest Builders. I'll see you later. Peace.